The suitcase sat open on our bed like a mouth ready to swallow lies. Jane folded her black lingerie, the set I'd bought her for our anniversary, with deliberate care, placing it between designer dresses I'd never seen her wear around me. Her movements were practiced, efficient, like she'd rehearsed this performance in front of the mirror while I was at work, managing construction sites and believing in the sanctity of our 18-year marriage. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, still wearing my high-vis vest and steel-capped boots, concrete dust in my hair and the smell of honest work on my clothes. The contrast wasn't lost on me coming home from building something real, permanent, while she prepared to tear down everything we'd constructed together. "Where exactly are you going again?" I asked, keeping my voice level and curious rather than accusatory. 23 years in construction had taught me that you gather all the facts before you start swinging hammers. "Gold Coast, I told you, the Digital Marketing Summit." She didn't look up from her meticulous packing, too focused on selecting the perfect combination of clothes that screamed anything but business conference. 15 days of intensive workshops and certification programs. 15 days. I let the words hang in the air between us like scaffolding that needed inspection. That's quite a long conference. Most professional development programs I know run 3 to 5 days maximum. Jane's hands paused for the briefest moment over a red dress that still had tags attached. Tags that showed a price point well beyond anything she'd normally spend on clothes for actual work events. "It's comprehensive," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she was carefully constructing a narrative. "Multi-level certification tracks, advanced workshops, networking sessions that run late into the evening. The company's investing heavily in my professional development." I nodded slowly, the way I did when reviewing blueprints that didn't quite add up. "And this company investment, that would explain the new clothes, the spa treatments, the hair appointment yesterday that cost more than most people spend on groceries." Her cheeks flushed pink, a telltale sign I'd learned to read over 18 years of marriage. Jane had never been a particularly good liar, which made her current performance all the more insulting to my intelligence. Madison bounced into the room with all the righteous indignation that 17 years of privilege and private school had instilled in her. She was brilliant, my daughter, top of her class, debate team captain, already accepted to 3 universities on academic scholarships. But her intelligence came with a stubborn streak that made her formidable in arguments, and exhausting when she decided to defend the indefensible. "Dad, stop interrogating Mum," she declared, crossing her arms in a gesture so reminiscent of Jane that it made my chest tighten. "She's trying to advance her career, and you're making her feel guilty about professional development. It's totally unfair." I studied my daughter's face, seeing Jane's determined chin and my own analytical eyes staring back at me. Madison had inherited the best and worst of both of us. Jane's quick tongue and passionate convictions paired with my methodical mind and stubborn pursuit of truth. "I'm not interrogating anyone, sweetheart," I said gently. "Just trying to understand why a digital marketing conference requires lingerie from Pacific Fair that costs more than my weekly salary." The room went silent, except for the sound of the ceiling fan turning lazy circles overhead. Jane's hands stilled completely over the suitcase, and Madison's defensive expression shifted to confusion as the implications of what I'd said began to sink in. "Knox," Jane said quietly, her voice carrying a warning I'd heard before, usually when I was getting too close to something she'd rather keep hidden. "Lingerie?" Madison's voice cracked slightly on the word. At 17, she was old enough to understand the implications, but still young enough to want to believe her mother was incapable of deception. I pulled out my phone with the careful deliberation of someone presenting evidence in court. The screenshots were all there. Bank statements, credit card receipts, online purchase confirmations, 3 months of careful documentation that painted a picture Jane couldn't explain away. "Your mother has spent nearly $12,000 in the past 3 months, I said, scrolling through the evidence with the methodical precision of someone who'd learned to double-check every measurement twice. Clothes, spa treatments, hair appointments, manicures, A weekend trip to Sydney she claimed was for a client meeting. All charged to accounts, she told me, were for household expenses. Madison looked between us like she was watching a building collapse in slow motion. Mum? Jane slammed the suitcase shut with more force than necessary. You've been monitoring my spending? I've been paying the bills, I corrected. Same as I have for 18 years. The difference is that now I'm paying attention to what those bills actually represent. I swiped to another screenshot. Care to explain the 5-star hotel charges in Sydney when you told me you were staying with your college friend Sarah? That's... Jane's mouth opened and closed like she was grasping for words that wouldn't come. The client meeting ran late. Sarah's place was too far from the city. Except Sarah moved to Perth 2 years ago. I kept my voice level, factual. I called her yesterday. Lovely conversation, actually. She was surprised to hear you'd been using her as an alibi. The color drained from Jane's face so quickly, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But 18 years of marriage had taught me to recognize the difference between genuine remorse and panic at being caught. Madison was staring at her mother with dawning horror. Mum, what's going on? Jane looked between us, calculating her options with the desperate efficiency of someone whose carefully constructed world was falling apart. I could see her weighing lies against truth, wondering how much she could salvage from the wreckage of her deception. It's not what you think, she said finally, the classic defense of everyone caught in circumstances they couldn't explain away. What I think, I said carefully, is that you're having an affair. What I think is that you've been systematically lying to me and our daughter for months while using our family's money to fund your deception. What I think is that this conference is actually a romantic getaway with someone who isn't your husband. Madison gasped audibly. Jane's face cycled through several emotions: surprise, anger, fear, and finally a kind of resigned defiance that told me everything I needed to know. You don't understand, Jane said, her voice taking on the pleading tone she used when she wanted something she knew she shouldn't have. It's complicated. Complicated? I tasted the word like it was bitter medicine. Is that what we're calling adultery now? Don't use that word, she snapped, some of her old fire returning. It's not that simple. Then explain it to me. Make it simple. I sat down on the edge of our bed, the bed where we'd conceived Madison, where we'd made plans for the future, where I'd held Jane through morning sickness and midnight fears and 18 years of shared dreams. Help me understand how spending $12,000 on clothes and hotels for another man isn't exactly what it looks like. Here's your excerpt condensed while keeping its emotional punch and narrative clarity. Madison's silent tears traced down her face as she watched the last bridge between her parents collapse. Who is he? I asked. Jane's chin lifted. Corey Matthews, from university. He's going through a divorce. He needs support. I pulled up his Facebook profile. Structural engineer, Palazzo Versace, Gold Coast, room 1847, her face drained of color. You've been stalking him? Madison whispered. No, I said, paying attention. I turned the phone so they could see Corey's poetic posts about meaningful connections. It's not like that, Jane protested. Aren't you cheating? I love him, she said. Madison made a strangled sound. Thank you, I replied, lifting her suitcase. Now we all know where we stand. Go to him. Take all the time you need. Dad, Madison began. I'm giving her exactly what she wants, sweetheart. Freedom. Just remember, choices have consequences. Some doors don't reopen. Jane expected a fight. Instead, I was already planning something far more methodical, comprehensive, and devastating. I had work to do. The drive to David Hart's law office took me through the heart of Brisbane's financial district, past buildings I'd helped construct over the past decade. Solid foundations, quality materials, built to last, everything Jane and I apparently weren't. The irony wasn't lost on me that I spent my professional life creating permanent structures while my personal life crumbled like poorly mixed concrete. David's office occupied the 32nd floor of a tower I'd worked on 5 years ago, back when Jane still kissed me goodbye in the mornings and asked about my day when I came home. The view overlooked the Brisbane River, where construction cranes dotted the skyline like mechanical prayers reaching toward heaven. "You're sure about this?" David asked, reviewing the documents I'd requested. He'd been my lawyer for 8 years, handling everything from contract disputes to business partnerships with the same methodical precision I appreciated in my construction work. "Once we file these papers, there's no going back quietly." I slid a thick folder across his mahogany desk. Bank statements going back 6 months, credit card receipts, text message screenshots, social media posts, even her browser history from our shared laptop. I kept my voice level, professional. "She's been planning this affair for months, maybe longer. The evidence is overwhelming." David opened the folder and began reading, his expression growing progressively more grim with each page. He was a good lawyer, thorough, ethical, with enough experience in family court to know when a case was unwinnable for the other side. "The prenup will hold," he said after reviewing the financial records. "Infidelity voids her claim to the house and business assets, limits her to whatever she brought into the marriage plus any retirement accounts in her name alone." He paused, looking up at me with something that might have been sympathy. "But Knox, Madison will be caught in the middle of this. Are you prepared for that?" I'd been asking myself the same question since the moment I'd confirmed Jane's affair. My daughter was 17, brilliant, college-bound in 8 months. She didn't deserve to have her family implode during her senior year, didn't deserve to choose sides between parents who were supposed to model stability and commitment. "Madison will understand when she's older," I said finally. "Right now, she sees her mother as the victim because that's the story Jane's been selling. But eventually, she'll realize that respect and honesty matter more than romantic feelings." And if she doesn't? The question hit harder than I expected. The possibility of losing both my wife and daughter to Jane's midlife crisis was something I'd been trying not to consider. "Then I'll have raised a daughter who thinks marriage vows are suggestions rather than promises," I said, "and that would be the greatest failure of my life." David nodded slowly. "How long until everything's ready?" 72 hours, maybe less. I'll have the forensic accountant review her spending patterns, document every fraudulent expense claim she's made. He leaned back in his leather chair. "You know, in 25 years of family law, I've seen a lot of men in your situation. Most of them want revenge. They want to hurt their wives as badly as they've been hurt." "I don't want revenge. What do you want?" I considered the question seriously. What did I want from this disaster Jane had created? I want accountability. I want consequences that match actions. I want my daughter to understand that integrity matters more than feelings. That's an expensive lesson. The alternative is teaching her that lying and cheating are acceptable as long as you feel justified. I stood up, straightening my tie. Some lessons are worth whatever they cost. David began organizing the evidence into files that would eventually find their way into courtrooms and legal briefs. "There's something else we need to discuss. If she's pregnant—" "She's not pregnant yet," I interrupted, "but she will be." David raised an eyebrow. "You sound very certain about that." "Jane has always wanted to be needed, to be the center of someone's world. Corey is getting divorced, which means he's vulnerable, emotional, probably willing to make promises about the future that he'll regret later." I walked to the window, looking down at the construction sites below where crews were laying foundations for buildings that would outlast most marriages. She'll get pregnant because that's how she'll try to force him to choose her over his freedom. And when that happens, she'll come home expecting forgiveness and reconciliation. She'll claim it was a mistake, that she loves me, that she wants to work things out. I turned back to face David. "And I'll hand her divorce papers that have been ready for months." The drive home took me through suburbs where I'd built half the developments over the past decade. Solid homes with proper foundations, quality materials, built to last for generations. Each one represented months of careful planning, skilled labor, Attention to detail that ensured stability and permanence. Unlike marriages, apparently. At home, Madison was stress-eating cereal straight from the box, a habit she'd developed during exam periods that had somehow become her go-to response to family crisis. She left, Madison announced without looking up from her bowl. I know. 20 minutes after you walked out. Just grabbed her suitcase and drove away like she was escaping from prison. Madison's spoon clattered against ceramic. Aren't you going to do something? Fight for her? Try to work this out? I poured myself coffee from the pot Jane had made before abandoning her family, noting absently that it was stronger than usual, probably because she'd been distracted, thinking about Corey while going through the motions of domestic life. What would you have me do, sweetheart? I don't know. Something. Anything. You're just sitting there like this is normal. I sat across from Madison at the kitchen island we'd selected together 3 years ago, back when we were still a family that made decisions collectively. The granite surface was cool under my hands, solid and permanent in a way that human relationships apparently weren't. What's normal about your mother falling in love with another man? Madison's face crumpled slightly. Maybe she's just confused. Maybe this is like a midlife crisis thing and she'll realize what she's throwing away. Maybe. I sipped my coffee, choosing my words carefully. Or maybe this is who your mother really is when she thinks no one will hold her accountable for her choices. That's not fair. What's not fair is spending our family's money on an affair. What's not fair is lying to people who love you. What's not fair is teaching your daughter that marriage vows are optional when someone better comes along. Madison pushed cereal around her bowl, processing information that would reshape her understanding of family, loyalty, and love. She was too intelligent not to see the contradictions in Jane's behavior, too loyal not to want to defend her mother anyway. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now we find out who your mother really is when she thinks no one's watching. And if she comes home? If she realizes she made a mistake? I looked at my daughter, this brilliant young woman who was about to learn that some mistakes couldn't be undone, some betrayals couldn't be forgiven, some doors couldn't be reopened once they'd been slammed shut. Then she'll discover that actions have consequences, I said, and some consequences last forever. Within hours of Jane's departure, Instagram lit up with her liberation tour, hashtags about self-discovery and authenticity, carefully staged for maximum effect. She'd always been deliberate online, projecting a curated life, happy family photos, articles on work-life balance, motivational quotes. But these posts showed a stranger. Day 1. Sometimes you need to step away from your routine to remember who you really are. Photo, hotel balcony, Gold Coast, sundress I'd never seen, expression of pure contentment. Madison noticed too. Scrolling her mother's feed at the kitchen counter, her face tightened. She looks happy. Yes, happier than here. Sometimes people are happiest when they're lying to themselves, I said. But what if she's not lying? What if this is who she really is and you made her miserable? Fair question. Our marriage had been on autopilot for months. Then we'll know and adjust. By day 3, posts doubled. Gourmet dinners, sunset yoga, boutique shopping. Each shot screamed freedom or delusion. Day 3. Invested in some beautiful pieces today. Self-love, Chakriti, or shut worth it. The irony was staggering, celebrating self-love, while abandoning her daughter and the husband who'd funded her dreams for 18 years. Day 4. Some connections are too strong to ignore. Soulmates, destiny, meant to be. Comments poured in, praise for her courage, admiration for her radiance, none of them knowing she'd bought this happiness by dismantling her family. Madison read with growing distress. Everyone thinks she's brave for leaving you. They don't know the whole story. Are you going to tell them? Tempting, but humiliation wasn't the justice I wanted. Some truths reveal themselves, lies don't hold up forever. Day 6. Grateful for friends who support your journey without judgment. Authentic. Blessed. New chapter. Photo. Jane and Corey at a beachside restaurant, his face half visible, mid-30s, well-maintained, familiar. They'd been doing this far longer than a week. Madison stared. He's handsome. Yes. Younger than you. Yes. Is that why she chose him? I looked at my daughter, watching her wrestle with how love could coexist with betrayal. Your mother chose him because he makes her feel like the person she wants to be instead of the person she actually is, I said. That's very appealing in the short term. In the long term, it's unsustainable. What do you mean? I mean that Corey is getting divorced. He's vulnerable, emotional, probably making promises about the future that sound wonderful when you're lying on a beach in Queensland. But eventually, real life intrudes. He'll have custody arrangements with his own children, financial obligations, career pressures. Your mother will discover that being someone's escape from reality is different from being their partner in building one. Madison nodded slowly. And when that happens? When that happens, she'll probably come home expecting forgiveness and reconciliation. She'll claim it was a mistake, that she loves me, that she wants to work things out. Would you take her back? The question I'd been avoiding for days hung between us like a bridge I wasn't ready to cross. Would I forgive 18 years of marriage for a few months of midlife crisis? Could I rebuild trust with someone who'd systematically lied to me and our daughter? Did love mean accepting behavior that violated every value I'd tried to teach Madison about integrity and commitment? I don't know, I said honestly. But I know that trust, once broken this completely, can never be fully repaired. And I won't model a marriage for you that teaches you to accept betrayal as long as someone claims to love you. That evening, Jane called for the first time since leaving. Her voice was bright, artificially cheerful, like she was performing for an audience that couldn't see her face. Knox? Just wanted to check in, see how you and Madison are doing. We're managing. How's the conference? A pause, the briefest hesitation that revealed how unprepared she was for casual conversation about her elaborate lie. Intensive. Really eye-opening workshops about digital transformation and customer engagement strategies. Sounds educational. Learning a lot about engagement? Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear her trying to decide whether my question was innocent or loaded with subtext. Yes, definitely. The networking opportunities alone have been incredible. Her voice picked up speed, the way it did when she was building momentum behind a story she wanted me to believe. I've made some amazing connections with industry leaders, people who really understand the future of digital marketing. I'm sure you have. Instagram certainly makes it look like you're having meaningful experiences. Dead silence. Jane wasn't stupid. She knew I followed her social media accounts, knew I'd seen every carefully curated post of her romantic getaway disguised as professional development. You're checking my Instagram? She asked finally. Madison showed me a few posts. You look very happy. I am happy. Happier than I've been in a long time. The admission hung between us like a confession she hadn't meant to make. Jane was happy. Happier than she'd been as my wife, as Madison's mother, as a member of the family she'd abandoned for a fantasy of what her life could be with someone else. I'm glad, I said, and meant it. Everyone deserves to be happy. Knox, She trailed off, seeming to realize that expressing gratitude for my understanding would require acknowledging what, exactly, I was being understanding about. Look, I might need to extend the trip a few days, she said finally. They've offered additional certification programs that could really advance my career. Of course they have. I kept my voice neutral, supportive even. Take all the time you need, Jane. Education is important. Thank you. I mean it. Thank you for being supportive of my professional development. I've always supported your dreams, I said, even when they take you away from us. After hanging up, I called David to check on our progress. The forensic accounting is complete, he reported. She's misappropriated nearly $23,000 through false expense claims over the past 8 months. The evidence package is comprehensive enough to support criminal fraud charges if you wanted to pursue them. I don't want her in prison, I just want her out of my life. The divorce papers will be ready tomorrow. Complete financial disclosure, custody arrangements, property division, everything we discussed. David paused. Knox, are you absolutely certain about this? Once we serve these papers, there's no pretending this is a temporary separation or marriage counseling opportunity. I looked around the kitchen where Jane had made coffee that morning, where she'd kissed Madison goodbye before school, where she'd maintained the facade of domestic normalcy right up until the moment she decided to abandon it all for a more exciting alternative. I'm certain. Have everything prepared for her return. I want this to be surgical. When do you think she'll be back? I considered the question, thinking about Jane's personality, her need for drama and validation, her tendency to create crises that required other people to rescue her from the consequences of her own choices. 2 weeks, maybe less. Long enough to realize that vacation romance isn't the same as building a life with someone. Short enough that she'll think she can explain this away as temporary insanity. And you'll be ready? I'll be ready. Jane's return was announced not by a phone call or text message, but by social media silence. After 8 days of constant posts documenting her journey of self-discovery, her Instagram went quiet for 12 hours. Then came a single photo. Jane alone on a hotel room bed looking thoughtful and slightly sad. Sometimes the most important conversations happen with yourself. Grateful for this time to reflect on what really matters. Introspection. Growth family first. Madison saw the post first and immediately began speculating about what it meant. She looks sad, Madison observed, studying the photo with the intensity of someone trying to decode a secret message. Yes, she does. Maybe she's realizing what she's thrown away. Maybe Corey isn't everything she thought he would be. I didn't respond, but privately, I agreed with Madison's assessment. Jane's expression in that photo was the look of someone whose fantasy had collided with reality, the inevitable moment when the excitement of new romance gave way to the complexity of actual human relationships. 6 hours later, Jane called. Knox? Her voice was different, smaller, less confident than it had been during previous conversations. I think I want to come home. Okay. The word seemed to catch her off guard. She'd probably expected questions, demands for explanation, maybe anger or hurt that she could work with to build a narrative about forgiveness and reconciliation. Okay, that's it? What else would you like me to say? I don't know. Maybe ask why or how I'm feeling or something. I kept my voice neutral, almost clinical. How are you feeling, Jane? Confused, overwhelmed, like I made a terrible mistake. Her voice cracked slightly. This whole thing has been... It's not what I expected. What did you expect? A long pause. I expected to feel free, happy, like myself again. Another pause. Instead, I just feel empty. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Sorry, I mean... The question was loaded with hope and desperation, a plea for me to reveal that I'd been miserable without her, that I wanted her back, that love meant accepting any behavior as long as the person eventually claimed to regret it. I'm sorry you're unhappy, I said carefully. I'm sorry this experience hasn't given you what you were looking for. What about us? Are you sorry about us? I looked around the kitchen where Madison sat doing homework, where life had continued in Jane's absence with surprising normalcy. No daily arguments about spending or social obligations, no tension about unfinished conversations or competing priorities, just peaceful routine and honest communication between two people who respected each other. I'm sorry our marriage got to the point where you felt you needed to look elsewhere for happiness, I said. I'm sorry I didn't see how unhappy you were before you decided to address it by betraying our family. Silence stretched between us across hundreds of miles of phone line. I want to come home, she said finally. I want to talk. I want to try to fix this. When? Tomorrow. I'll drive back tomorrow morning. I'll be here. After she hung up, Madison looked up from her calculus homework with hope written across her face. She's coming home? She's coming home. Are you going to forgive her? I sat down across from my daughter, this brilliant young woman who was about to witness either the restoration of her family or its final destruction. I'm going to listen to what she has to say, I said, and then I'm going to respond honestly. What does that mean? It means that forgiveness and reconciliation aren't the same thing. It means that love without respect isn't enough to rebuild what's been broken. And it means that some choices have consequences that can't be undone, no matter how much someone regrets making them. Madison nodded slowly, processing wisdom she shouldn't have to learn at 17. Dad? Yes. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm proud of how you've handled this. You could have been angry, vindictive, cruel. Instead, you've just been honest. Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything to me. That night, I called David to confirm our preparations. Everything's ready, he assured me. Divorce papers, financial documents, custody arrangements. All we need is your final authorization. You'll have it tomorrow. Knox, are you certain about this? Once we serve these papers, there's no going back. If she's genuinely repentant, if she wants to work on the marriage. She's not repentant about the affair, I interrupted. She's disappointed that it didn't turn out the way she fantasized. There's a difference. How can you be so sure? I thought about Jane's Instagram posts, her bright voice during phone calls, her excitement about new connections and meaningful experiences. Because she's been documenting her journey of self-discovery on social media like it was a spiritual retreat instead of adultery. Someone who felt genuine remorse wouldn't be posting inspirational quotes about living authentically while abandoning her family. Point taken. Besides, David, even if she was genuinely sorry, it wouldn't change what she's done. It wouldn't erase the lies, the financial betrayal, the months of systematic deception. Some actions have consequences that apologies can't fix. Understood. We'll be ready. I spent the rest of the evening preparing for Jane's return, not by cleaning house or planning romantic gestures, but by mentally rehearsing the conversation we needed to have about the end of our marriage. 18 years deserved more than angry accusations or bitter recriminations. They deserved honesty, clarity, and the dignity of acknowledging what we'd built before Jane chose to tear it down. Tomorrow would bring either the beginning of genuine reconciliation or the formal end of our family as Madison had always known it. I was prepared for both possibilities, but I was only hoping for one. Jane arrived home on a Tuesday afternoon, driving up our driveway like she was returning from a routine business trip instead of an 8-day romantic getaway that had destroyed our marriage. I watched through the kitchen window as she sat in her car for several minutes, gathering courage or perhaps rehearsing whatever speech she'd prepared for this moment. When she finally walked through the front door, I was struck by how different she looked. Not just the obvious things, the expensive clothes, the professional tan, the carefully styled hair that screamed salon rather than home maintenance. It was something in her posture, her expression, the way she moved through our house like she was visiting a place she'd once lived rather than returning home. Knox, she said, setting her suitcase down in the entryway. Thank you for letting me come back. This is still your house, too. She nodded, seeming uncertain about what came next. The Jane who'd left 8 days ago had been confident, defiant, determined to pursue her authentic self regardless of the consequences. This version seemed smaller, more fragile, like someone whose grand gesture had collapsed under the weight of reality. Where's Madison? She asked. School. She'll be home in an hour. Good. That gives us time to talk. We sat in our living room, the same room where we'd hosted Madison's birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family game nights when life was simpler, and our biggest disagreements centered on whether to order pizza or Chinese food. The distance between us on the couch felt oceanic. I made a mistake, Jane said without preamble. Which mistake would that be? She looked at me with something that might have been surprise. Leaving, going to Corey, all of it. What specifically was the mistake? The affair itself, or the fact that it didn't work out the way you hoped? The question seemed to catch her off guard. Does it matter? Yes, it matters. It matters whether you're sorry you hurt our family or just disappointed that your fantasy didn't become reality. Jane was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands folded in her lap. I thought I would feel free, she said finally. I thought being with Corey would make me feel like myself again, like the person I was before marriage and motherhood changed everything. And did it? For a while. The first few days were incredible. We talked for hours about our dreams, our regrets, what we wanted from life. He made me feel interesting, desirable, important. Her voice took on a wistful quality. I felt like I mattered in ways I haven't felt in years. What changed? Jane's expression shifted, clouds moving across what had been a nostalgic landscape. Reality. His divorce isn't as simple as he made it sound. He has 2 children he barely sees, financial obligations that consume most of his income, an ex-wife who calls him constantly about emergencies that always seem to require money. She looked up at me with something that might have been embarrassment. And he has other women, not just me. This whole healing journey thing is apparently how he meets vulnerable married women looking for validation. The admission hung between us like evidence in a trial. Jane had discovered that her soulmate was actually a serial manipulator who specialized in exploiting women going through midlife crises. The romance that had seemed worth destroying our marriage for had turned out to be a predictable pattern repeated with multiple victims. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. Not sorry that her affair had failed, but sorry that she'd been foolish enough to believe in fairy tales at the expense of our family's stability. "Are you, really? I'm sorry you were hurt. I'm sorry you discovered that fantasies don't translate well to reality. I'm sorry you had to learn that lesson at such an expensive cost." Jane's eyes brimmed. "Knox, I know I hurt you. I know I hurt Madison. I made terrible choices, but I want to come home. I want to fix this. I want us to work." I looked out the window at the street where we'd built 12 years of life, where Madison learned to ride her bike, until Jane decided it wasn't enough. What does work mean exactly? Counseling, rebuilding trust, remembering why we fell in love. I turned to face her. "Jane, do you think I'm stupid?" "What? Then don't treat me like I am." "This wasn't a mistake. It was months of calculated decisions. You found Corey, rekindled things, set up meetings, hid money, lied to me and Madison, and spent thousands to fund your affair. Knox, I'm not finished. You marketed your adultery as a journey of self-discovery. You called me from his hotel to lie about conferences. You're here because your fantasy collapsed, not because you realized what you threw away." Tears rolled down her face. I felt nothing. "You're not sorry for the affair. You're sorry Corey turned out to be a user. If he'd been everything you hoped, wealthy, devoted, would you be asking for my forgiveness?" Her silence was the answer. Madison's key turned in the lock. She stepped into the room, scanning our faces. "Mom," she said softly, "you're back." Jane opened her arms hopefully, but Madison didn't move toward her. Instead, she looked between us with the analytical intelligence she'd inherited from both parents. "How did it go?" Madison asked. Not, "Are you happy to be home?" or "Did you miss us?" But how did it go? As if Jane's departure had been a business trip with measurable outcomes. "It was complicated," Jane said carefully. "Complicated how?" Jane looked to me for help, but I remained silent. This was her story to tell, her choices to explain. "Sometimes what we think we want isn't what we actually need," Jane said finally. Madison nodded slowly. "So you didn't find what you were looking for with Corey?" The use of Corey's name hit Jane like a slap. She'd probably hoped Madison didn't know the details, that she could frame her absence as confusion, not calculated betrayal. "Madison, It's okay, Mom. Dad explained everything." Madison's voice was calm, far older than 17. "I've seen the bank statements, the hotel receipts, the texts. I know you've been planning this for months." Jane went pale. "You told her everything?" "I told her the truth," I said. "She's 17, not 7. She deserves to know." "You turned her against me?" "I gave her facts. Her conclusions are yours to own." Madison sat, hands folded just like her mother's. "If Corey had been everything you wanted, rich, available, ready to marry you, would you have come home?" Jane faltered. "Madison, it's more complicated." "No, it's simple," Madison cut in. "You're here because he didn't want you, not because you wanted us." "That's not true. I love you, both of you." You love the security we give you, but you don't love us enough to put us first when it matters. Madison rose. I'm glad you're safe, Mom. I'm not glad you're home. Her bedroom door closed with the finality of a gavel. Jane stared after her. She hates me. She's disappointed, I said. That's worse. You've poisoned her against me. I've raised her to value integrity. You showed her what happens when those values are abandoned. I stood, drained. Jane, this marriage is over. No, we can work through this. People survive affairs. This wasn't an affair. It was months of deception, stolen money, emotional abuse. You performed the role of wife and mother while secretly replacing me. She cried harder. I felt nothing. I need you to pack a bag and leave, I continued. Tonight? This is my house too. Actually, it's not. The deed is in my name, purchased with my income after we signed a prenup that voids your claim to marital property in case of infidelity. I walked to the front hall closet and retrieved a manila envelope I'd placed there that morning. David Hart prepared these papers yesterday. Jane stared at the envelope like it might explode. Divorce papers? Divorce papers, financial disclosures, custody arrangements. Everything we need to dissolve this marriage legally. She opened the envelope with trembling hands, scanning documents that would reshape her entire future. The prenup she'd signed as a trusting 23-year-old was now protecting the man she'd betrayed from the financial consequences of her choices. I get nothing? You get your retirement accounts, your personal possessions, and supervised visitation with Madison until she turns 18 in 8 months. After that, any relationship you have with her will be based on whether she decides you've earned back her respect. Supervised visitation? Knox, you can't be serious. You abandoned your family for 8 days to pursue a romantic relationship with another man. That demonstrates questionable judgment regarding Madison's emotional well-being. Jane looked around our living room, the room where we'd made love on weekend mornings when Madison was younger, where we'd planned vacations and discussed dreams and built what I'd thought was a partnership based on mutual respect and shared values. 18 years, she said quietly. 18 years of marriage, and this is how it ends? No, I corrected. This is how it ends because of choices you made, because you decided that your feelings mattered more than your commitments, because you taught our daughter that love is conditional and marriage vows are suggestions. I walked to the front door and held it open, the same gesture I'd made 8 days ago when I'd given her permission to destroy our family. Jane, you need to leave, tonight. She stood slowly, looking around the room one more time, like she was memorizing details she'd never see again. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. Knox, please. I know I made mistakes, but I'm still Madison's mother. I'm still your wife. You were my wife. Past tense. You stopped being my partner the moment you decided Corey Matthews was more important than our family. Jane picked up her suitcase with mechanical movements, the same suitcase she'd packed so carefully 8 days ago for what she'd thought would be the beginning of her new life. Can I at least say goodbye to Madison? She's made it clear she doesn't want to talk to you right now. I won't force her to perform affection she doesn't feel. Jane walked toward the door, then turned back one last time. I did love you, Knox, I still do. I know, I said, but love without respect isn't enough. And love without loyalty isn't really love at all. It's just comfortable cohabitation until something better comes along. The door closed behind Jane with a soft click that seemed to echo through the house like a period at the end of a very long sentence. I stood in the entryway for several minutes, processing the strange sensation of watching 18 years of marriage end not with dramatic confrontation, but with quiet finality. Madison appeared at the top of the stairs, having obviously listened to the entire conversation. Is she gone? Madison asked. She's gone. For good this time? For good. Madison nodded, processing information that would reshape her understanding of family, commitment, and the difference between love and loyalty. Dad? Yes? I'm proud of you. You could have yelled, made threats, tried to hurt her the way she hurt you. Instead, you just told the truth and let the consequences speak for themselves. Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything to me. What happens now? I looked around the house Jane and I had built, the furniture we'd chosen, the photos of years we thought were solid, before she decided it wasn't enough. Now we figure out what our family looks like with just the two of us, I told Madison. We focus on your senior year, college applications, your future. We build something new from what's left. Will you be okay? The question stopped me. In all the months of preparing for divorce and shielding her from the worst of Jane's choices, I hadn't thought much about my own state. I think so, I said. Better than okay. I'll be free to build relationships on honesty, not manage ones based on lies. Madison smiled for the first time in weeks. Good. You deserve better. That night, alone in the kitchen where Jane had made coffee just that morning, the house felt different. Peaceful. My phone buzzed. Georgina, the structural engineer consulting on my latest project. How did things go today? I know Jane was coming home. Exactly as expected. She's gone, divorce is filed, and Madison and I are adjusting. Are you okay? Better than I expected. There's peace in dealing with problems instead of managing them forever. That sounds very you. Engineering approach to emotional challenges. Speaking of engineering, coffee tomorrow? I've got bridge questions that need in-person discussion. Bridge specifications need careful consultation. Structural integrity is critical. Absolutely, can't have anything collapsing under pressure. Number better to build something that gets stronger over time. My thoughts exactly. 4 o'clock? Looking forward to it. I set the phone down. In 8 months, Madison would leave for university. The house would be empty except for me and whatever future I chose to build from the wreckage. Outside, Brisbane hummed. Construction sites rising, steel beams set with millimeter precision. Some structures were worth reinforcing. Others had to be demolished to make room for something better. I'd spent 18 years trying to shore up a foundation that was never stable. Now I could start fresh, with better materials, smarter specifications, and the hard-earned knowledge of what fails under pressure. Tomorrow, coffee with a woman who understood structural integrity. Next week, Madison's applications. Next month, divorce finalized. Jane's consequences were hers. Mine were just beginning. And for the first time in months, I was building something new from the ground up, something designed to last. It felt exactly like freedom.